A very good evening and welcome to the news tonight. I'm Tracy Shilshi, and in the next 30 minutes I'll be getting you the day's top stories. Monday evening there's a lot making the news, so let's start with the headlines. Greece avoids exit from Eurozone, gets a third bailout after Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras agrees to implement tough reforms. Despite a joint statement released by India and Pakistan in Ufa, Pakistani NSA Sartaj Aziz says no dialogue without Kashmir. Says more evidence is needed to speed up the 2611 trial. Hopes of an RBI rate cut dim as higher food prices push India's retail inflation rate to an 8-month high of 5.48%. Ahead of Parliament's monsoon session, opposition parties get a chance to exhibit unity at Sonia Gandhi's Iftar party. And Indian aviation gets Gagan, a GPS-aided geoaugmented navigation system that will improve efficiency, increase fuel savings and effect cost savings. Our top story this evening, Eurozone leaders have agreed to offer Greece a third bailout after marathon talks in Brussels overnight. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras agreed to tough reforms in return for a 3-year bailout worth up to 86 billion euros. Here are the details on how Greece avoided an exit from the EU.
After days of uncertainty over its future in the Eurozone, Greece finally managed to get another bailout deal, its third in 5 months. After more than 17 hours of talks on reforms and more financial aid for the near-bankrupt country, European leaders unanimously agreed to lend more money to Greece.
There are strict conditions to be met. The approval of several national parliaments, including the Greek parliament, is now needed for negotiations on an ESM program to formally begin.
Wir verweisen auch zu Beginn unseres gemeinsamen Papiers darauf, dass Vertrauen wieder aufgebaut werden muss, dass die griechischen Verantwortlichen auch Verantwortung für das, was wir jetzt hier politisch beschlossen haben, übernehmen müssen, um das alles umsetzen zu können.
Here's a look at some of the key points of the deal. Greek assets worth up to 50 billion euros will be transferred to a new fund. Talks will begin immediately on bridging finance to avert the collapse of Greece's banking system and help cover its debt repayments this summer. Greece has been promised discussions on restructuring its debts. The Eurogroup is ready to consider extending the maturity on Greek loans. The Greek parliament will also have to approve the deal. It will have to start passing legislation to implement the agreed measures. The terms imposed may put more pressure on Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras. He will now have to rush swaths of legislation through Parliament this week to convince his 18 partners to release bridging funds to avert a state bankruptcy and just to begin negotiations on a 3-year loan. However, key opposition parties termed the deal as a humiliating one.
Η απόφαση σήμερα κρατάει την Ελλάδα σε συνθήκες χρηματοπιστωτικής ευστάθειας, δίνει δυνατότητες ανάκαμψης. Ταυτόχρονα όμως ξέραμε από πριν ότι θα είναι και μια συμφωνία που η υλοποίησή της.
Αναγκαστήκαμε όμως να δεχτούμε ένα μνημόνιο 3 εξαιρετικά σκληρό, σκληρότερο των προηγουμένων. Αναγκαστήκαμε να αποδεχθούμε όρους σκληρούς και ταπεινωτικούς που είχαμε απορρίψει όλα τα προηγούμενα χρόνια.
In a sign of how hard it may be for Tsipras to convince his own party to accept the deal, Labour Minister Panos Choulatis said the terms were unviable and would lead to new elections this year. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
In other news, Pakistan has now asked for more evidence and information from India on the 2611 Mumbai attacks case. Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's advisor Sartaj Aziz said that they needed more proof to expedite the trial. It has also ruled out any talks without Kashmir issue on the agenda. All this barely 3 days after the two sides agreed to re-engage when Prime Minister Modi held talks with Sharif in Ufa.
Pak PM's advisor and NSA Sartaj Aziz has said that Islamabad needs more evidence from India in the ongoing 2611 trial. The statement comes 3 days after Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Pak Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif met in Ufa and agreed to discuss ways to expedite the ongoing trial in Pakistan.
On Mumbai trial, our view has been, and was so in this meeting as well, that we need more evidence and information to conclude the trial. The reference to additional information is the recognition of the need for more information is needed to expedite the trial.
Pakistan has also ruled out resumption in talks with India soon. It wants assurance of Kashmir issue on the agenda to begin the process.
The statement says very clearly that both sides agreed on the need to discuss and resolve all issues. So now it is, we are not going to beg or show over anxiety about dialogue. If India now follows up this with the next step of seeking a formal dialogue, then I can assure you that no dialogue will take place unless Kashmir is on the agenda. So that is our clear position in that sense.
Even though the External Affairs Ministry is yet to respond to the statements, Aziz's remarks have sparked strong reactions in Delhi. Opposition parties have questioned justification of the Modi-Sharif meeting last week.
पाकिस्तान शायद सही दिशा में नहीं जाना पसंद करता, लेकिन दुनिया को दिखाने के लिए वो पहुंच जाते हैं बात करने के लिए कि देखिए हम तो तैयार हैं, लेकिन भारत जो है वो हमको सहयोग नहीं देती। अगर ऐसा हो रहा है जिसका हम लोगों को अंदेशा था और हमको डाउट था जिस बात का, तो हमको थोड़ा सा हमारी सरकार को इस पे थोड़ा सतर्क रहने की आवश्यकता थी।
Statements coming from others are possibly intended to address their domestic constituency. I think the discussions, engagements will largely happen on the lines of the joint statement.
The joint statement in Ufa had outlined a 5-point roadmap which included sharing voice samples in the trial. But on Sunday, Pak prosecutor in the 2611 trial ruled out a fresh petition seeking the mastermind Zakiur Rahman Lakhvi's voice sample. He said such proof are not permissible in the Pakistani courts. However, Indian prosecutor in 2611 trial Ujjwal Nikam rejected the claim.
उस वक्त हमें यह कहा गया था कि नया एक जो कानून अभी आने वाला है पाकिस्तान उसके तहत वॉइस सैंपल ले सकते हैं। अगर पाकिस्तान के नवाब शरीफ साहब एक कमिटमेंट करते हैं कि वॉइस सैंपल दे, तो पाकिस्तान में वो अमेंडमेंट क्यों नहीं लाएगी?
India has raised strong objections to Lakhvi's bail granted by the Pak court. It sought UN intervention to ensure action against the 2611 mastermind, but the move was blocked by China. It remains to be seen how the two sides proceed to expedite the trial in Pakistan. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
For more on this, let's speak to Siddharth Vadarajan, senior journalist, joining us now from the capital. Siddharth, obviously it's a blatant U-turn that we're seeing in just 3 days of time. But as far as the 2611 case is concerned, I mean, when in all seriousness has Pakistan kept its word?
Look, I don't think we should read too much into the post-UFA addresses being made by politicians either in India or Pakistan who have to present what is obviously a statement, a U-turn, they have to market the statement to their domestic audiences. So I think, Sartaj Aziz is obviously under pressure in Pakistan for having agreed to a statement that does not use the Kashmir word, even though there's a reference to all issues, and to having spoken of voice samples for the 2611 case. So, this is par for the course. I think it's essential that India not get overly excited by these kinds of statements. There is a roadmap that was identified in UFA, and the most important part of that roadmap is the meeting that will take place in Delhi between Sartaj Aziz and his counterpart, Mr. Ajit Doval, and I think they should stick to that. They should discuss all issues related to terrorism and see where that process goes, from there. I think to get sidetracked into, whatever Sartaj Aziz or BJP spokespersons or government people here or there are saying, I think would not be very helpful.
All right. But at the same time, when it comes to the 2611 case itself, Siddharth, voice sample, the very crucial bit that at least both the leaders had decided upon exchanging, in UFA. And if we do stick to what the joint statement is, the core of it, a voice sample is not something that can be attainable as far as the Constitution of Pakistan is concerned. At least that's what Lakhvi's lawyer is saying.
Well, I'm afraid that the reference in the joint statement to voice samples in the 2611 trial is rather poorly drafted. It is ambiguous, it's open-ended, it commits the two sides only to explore all ways, it doesn't commit Pakistan to actually delivering anything, quite frankly. And the reference to expediting the Mumbai trial raises the question of which trial are we talking about, because the trial in India is over. So it's the trial in Pakistan that is clearly being referenced. And, who exactly is supposed to give voice samples to whom is left rather vague in this statement. So, which is why you have the Indian side saying Pakistanis have to give us samples, and you have the Pakistani side saying Indians have to give us material to expedite the trial. So I think we shouldn't hold our breath on this, quite frankly. It doesn't make any sense to have unrealistic expectations that a trial which Pakistan has not taken very seriously in the past 3 or 4 years is overnight going to be expedited. It will not happen. It may happen as a byproduct of the forthcoming meeting between Sartaj Aziz and Mr. Doval, but I don't think that we should worry too much about Pakistan delivering on a commitment that we believe it's made before that meeting takes place. I think that we should hold our expectations until the Sartaj Aziz Doval meeting takes place in Delhi.
All right. So what you're saying crucially is that the very fact that the two leaders, the two prime ministers did meet, that in itself is a good step in, thawing of relations as far as India and Pakistan is concerned. And the NSA level talks is something that we should be looking forward to.
Exactly. Look, both Mr. Modi and Mr. Nawaz Sharif have done a U-turn of sorts. And they've done this for the simple reason that the continuation of tension between India and Pakistan does not help either country. So if we look at the UFA statement as preparing the ground for an engagement that will reduce tension and create the atmosphere for the two sides to talk, I think that's by itself a very, very positive achievement. And it's unfortunate that in selling this statement to their domestic audiences, political leaders in both India and Pakistan are resorting to, shall we say,
trying to calm down public criticism.
It's important that those messages and and it's important that those statements not sidetracked from the essence of what was agreed at UFA.
All right, Siddharth Varadarajan, thanks so much for joining us here on the news tonight. Heading on to more news, India and Tajikistan have decided to intensify cooperation in combating terrorism as well as in the spheres of defense and connectivity. During Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit there, the two sides inked agreements on culture and human resource development. Tajikistan is the last stop for Modi, remember, ending his 8-day trip to Central Asia.
India and Tajikistan have pledged to further deepen their cooperation to fight the menace and agreed to step up defense ties besides boosting trade and investment. Prime Minister Narendra Modi held talks with Tajik President Emomali Rahmon on Monday. Modi said that both sides have agreed to jointly counter terrorism in the region.
We are both located in the proximity of the main source of terrorism. Combating terrorism and extremism has always been an important and productive area of cooperation. At a time of growing threat of terrorism, we have resolved to intensify our cooperation further.
Modi said both the nations were in talks to expand connectivity between them.
Connectivity is vital for realizing the full potential of trade and commerce between our countries. We agreed to promote the international North-South Transport Corridor, other connectivity initiatives.
The two sides also signed agreements on culture and human resources. The two leaders presided over the signing of the agreements after a round of delegation-level talks. According to the agreements, India will set up 37 computer labs in Tajik schools. The two sides also decided to set up closer economic ties.
We have talked our joint commission to meet soon and finalize a concrete roadmap to expand our trade and economic ties.
Later, Modi also unveiled a bust of Nobel laureate poet Rabindranath Tagore and gifted medicines to the India-Tajikistan Friendship Hospital during his visit. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, higher food prices pushed India's retail inflation to an 8-month high in June, hitting hopes of an interest rate cut by the RBI. Retail inflation rose on costlier food items, fuel, housing, clothing and footwear, while prices of sugar and confectionery eased during the month. According to government data, food inflation rose to 5.48% in June from 4.80% in May. Urban inflation was at 4.55% compared to 4.41% in May. Rural inflation, on the other hand, rose to 6.07% in June compared to 5.52% in May. Without a quick break here, but still ahead, the CBI is taking charge of the Vyapam case probe. Team reaches Bhopal to complete the preliminary assessment of the investigation. Details ahead.
A 10-day tour, 2 high-profile summits, both with significant outcomes. What have been the gains for India? Watch the big picture at 9:30 p.m. only on Rajya Sabha TV.
Welcome back. You're watching the news tonight. Now, many political parties, party leaders, in fact, attended the Iftar party hosted by Congress President Sonia Gandhi today. Prominent among them were leaders from the TMC, NCP, the JDU, RJD, National Conference, the DMK and the BSP. Now, some of the guests included Pakistan High Commissioner Abdul Basit, Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, former Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Umar Abdullah and Telangana leader Hanumant Rao. Now, coming ahead of the monsoon session of Parliament, the event was seen as an attempt to showcase opposition unity. However, RJD Chief Lalu Prasad and West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee could not come, reportedly because of prior commitments. For more on this, let's speak to Vishal Daya, who's in fact tracking those developments, our correspondent there. Vishal, give us a sense really of the importance of this particular Iftar party, more political than, of course, for the very sense of Iftar.
Well, yes, you are right, Tracy. Although the hosts, that is the Congress president and the Congress party itself, rather, before the Iftar also made it pretty clear that this is a social event and nothing political should be associated with it or read into it. But then, if you look at the political side of this entire event, then it seems that it has not gone as expected for the Congress party or as expected for the host, simply because of the reason, as you pointed out, that though Mamata Banerjee and Mulayam Singh Yadav had made it clear in the beginning itself that they might not be able to attend the Iftar. But then, very interestingly, not only Mulayam Singh Yadav, but the entire lot of the Samajwadi Party was missing from the Iftar. Also not to be seen in the Iftar dinner were from old friends of the Congress party, those from the left parties. None of them was present there, though there are obviously different reasons for that. Sitaram Yechuri is said to be in London at this point in time, and there are other leaders apparently have their own other engagements. But then, if you look at the political angle to it, apart from the senior leaders, or rather the regional satraps who could have made difference in cementing the opposition unity against the government, specifically in the wake of the monsoon session. Specifically, there are 4 names: Mulayam Singh Yadav, Mamata Banerjee, Nitish Kumar and Lalu Prasad Yadav. So out of these 4, only Nitish Kumar, along with Sharad Yadav, his party colleague and party president, was present out there. All rest of the 3 were missing. They had their own reasons. Even Mamata and Lalu Prasad did send their emissaries in the form of Derek O'Brien and Jayaprakash Narayan. But then Mulayam Singh Yadav and his party, it seems, didn't even do that. So politically speaking, it seems the Congress will have to now rework its strategy as far as cornering the government on the floor of the House is concerned. Things might not be that easy as far as the opposition unity is concerned for the Congress, as it as they seemed quite a few days ago.
All right, we leave it there for the moment. Thanks so much, Vishal, for joining us with that. On to more news, and a CBI team is in Bhopal and has taken charge of the Vyapam scam investigation. It will now make a preliminary assessment of the probe conducted so far by the Special Task Force of the Madhya Pradesh Police. The team also held talks with the state police officials and the High Court-appointed Special Investigation Team that has been monitoring the investigation on a day-to-day basis. Now, as part of its Vyapam probe, the CBI will investigate the massive rigging of examinations for jobs and admission to various educational institutions conducted by the Madhya Pradesh Professional Examination Board. It will also ascertain the number of cases needed to be registered by it. And our special focus, the Aviation Ministry today unveiled an indigenously developed satellite-based navigation system, Gagan. It is expected to give a major boost to the Indian aviation navigation system. India is the only country apart from the US, Japan and European nations to boast of such a high-tech navigation system.
Civil Aviation Minister Ashok Gajapati Raju today launched the GPS-aided geo-augmented navigation system, or Gagan.
This advanced technology is known as Gagan.
It has been jointly developed by Airports Authority of India and Indian Space Research Organisation at an estimated cost of 774 crore rupees.
Only covers civil aviation. It covers much more. So when will the ANCB? So I would suggest that let this capabilities at least be transmitted to the people, so that people can start thinking of how to utilize this asset which our country has.
At present, radio navigation aids are used for precision in landing and approaches at Indian airports. However, Gagan will help improve efficiency, direct routes, increase fuel savings, significant cost savings due to withdrawal of ground aids, and reduce workload of flight crew and air traffic controllers. It will make it easier for aircraft movements to small airports which do not have navigation aids.
In India, when you test something, you can test anywhere in the world, because all type of terrains, it can be islands, it can be hills, it can be Western Ghats, Eastern Ghats, or the Northern Himalayas, and the peaks, and where we have the snow cover, etc. And then type of a certification which goes from DGCA to and gives Airports Authority of India today. That means you can fly at all terrains with a lot of confidence.
However, the way ahead isn't that easy. Existing aircrafts would have to be retrofitted with the receivers in order to use Gagan as a primary source of navigation. Until then, use of satellite-based navigation system in the country would be minimal. Kriti Mishra, Rajya Sabha TV.
With that, let's get you more updates from across the country in Nationwide. Foiling an infiltration bid along the line of control, the army today killed one terrorist in the Poonch district of Jammu and Kashmir. Troops guarded the LOC challenged the group of militants trying to infiltrate into Indian territory, resulting in an encounter. This is the second day when a Pakistan infiltration attempt has been foiled. The Supreme Court today sought a response of the Nithari serial killings case convict Surendra Kohli on a plea of the Uttar Pradesh government against the Allahabad High Court verdict that commuted his death penalty to lifetime earlier this year. Kohli was sentenced to death by a special CBI court in Ghaziabad in February 2009. The Supreme Court today extended Italian Marine Massimiliano Lattore's stay in Italy on medical grounds by 6 months. The Apex Court has also issued a notice to the centre on a plea by Italy seeking international arbitration in the case. Italian Marines Lattore and Salvatore Gironi are accused of killing 2 Indian fishermen off the Kerala coast in February 2012. The monsoon session of Maharashtra legislature got off to a noisy start today, with opposition members flaying the BJP-led government over apathy on loan waiver for farmers. The opposition members, led by the leaders of the opposition in both houses, shouted slogans against the government at the entrance of the Vidhan Bhavan as soon as the Chief Minister reached there. More international news, and after 3 extensions in 2 weeks, the high-stakes negotiations on Iran's nuclear program could finally be drawing to a close. The talks in Vienna could see a final accord signed in the next couple of days. The agreement is likely to be a detailed document that ensures curbs on Iran's nuclear activity.
After 2 weeks of marathon negotiations, Iran and the 6 world powers are closing in on a historic nuclear deal. Diplomats at the talks suggest the final accord could be announced as early as Monday, although leaders are expressing cautious optimism.
خب مذاکرات دیگه به لحظات واقعا نفسگیر آخر خودش رسیده. پیشرفت‌های خیلی خوبی انجام شده در این 2-3 روزه و البته هنوز بعضی از مشکلات وجود داره که تا حل نشه ما نمیتونیم.
Et j'espère que nous entrons enfin dans la dernière phase de cette négociation marathon. Je le crois.
那么经过这2天的密集的磋商，最终谈判已经取得了新的进展。中方认为，任何协议都不可能十全十美，现在已经具备了达成一个好的协议的条件了。
Leaders have drawn up a 100-page document detailing curbs on Iran's nuclear activity and relief from sanctions. The language is precise in order to minimize future disagreements. The deal will limit Iran's enrichment program for at least the next decade. But there are some who feel threatened by the deal. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused the international leaders of caving into Iran. He said Iran will continue its murderous aggression despite negotiating a deal.
שליטה של איראן, חמינאי, מצוטט כאומר שצריך להתכונן להילחם בארצות הברית, בלי קשר לשאלה אם יהיה הסכם. נשיאה של איראן, רוחני, עומד בראש מצעד שנאה ברחובות טהרן.
An agreement will be the biggest step towards rapprochement between Iran and the West since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. But it still faces a tough passage through the US Congress, which could still reject the deal, leaving US sanctions in place. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now let's get you more international news in Global Buzz. A suicide car bombing near a military base in eastern Afghanistan that once hosted CIA employees killed at least 26 people and wounded 9 on Sunday. The bombing took place close to a checkpoint on the outskirts of the city of Khost, where several cars had been stopped. This is the latest insurgent attack after foreign forces ended their combat mission there. A series of bombings targeting mainly Shiite Muslim districts of Baghdad killed at least 35 and wounded more than 100 on Sunday. No one immediately claimed responsibility for the attacks, but Islamic State militants who control much of the northern Iran area regularly send bombers to the capital. French special forces today have freed 18 Primark employees unharmed after 3 gunmen carrying sawed-off shotguns staged an attempted armed robbery on the store near Paris. The gunmen are still believed to be hiding out in the shopping centre. And changing tracks, let's get you all the sports action in SportsBeat. Sanju Samson will replace Ambati Rayudu for the rest of the series against Zimbabwe. Rayudu has been ruled out due to an injury. According to the BCCI, he will require 2-3 weeks of rehabilitation. Rayudu helped India win the first ODI remember by scoring his 2nd century. The BCCI has suspended Mumbai's Ranji cricketer Hikaim Shah after he was found guilty of breaching the anti-corruption code. BCCI said that his suspension was enforced with immediate effect. According to reports, Shah made an approach to one of the members of the IPL team, Rajasthan Royals. After India, Bangladesh has now stunned South Africa. They defeated the Proteas in the 2nd ODI by 7 wickets on Sunday to qualify for the Champions Trophy in 2017. Without most of its key players, South Africa were bowled out for 162 runs. Later, Soumya Sarkar and Mahmudullah helped the hosts to wrap up the match easily. And that's all we have for you on the news tonight from the entire team here. Good night.